Oh, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. I am your sensei, your griot, your teller of stories, and this channel is simply for your fun, your entertainment, right? And we're all so addicted to entertainment. But there may be, as being the god that I am, the stories that I tell give you insight. Now, that's really up to you to make the decision, right? And don't believe a word I say. And this show is for people who are not addicted, not an infant is way more intelligent than a grown up, right? And as they are pushed into the direction of age, it's simply an experience, right? It's like a funhouse ride, right? And so it's all your perception of what's going on, right? So here we are, and I'm old enough, So I was trying to describe the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemy that I experience from my perspective, right? And my perspective is that I don't see myself as entitled. I don't see myself as exceptional. I don't see myself as, someone it's all about me. My experience is the we in me. What makes me happy? There's a difference between happiness and pleasure. Makes me happy is when I make others happy. When I tell you a story and it opens your heart, when I read your palm and it gives you insight to what's going on in your life. When I can make your life better, that's what makes my life better. Now, pleasure is something else. Pleasure is that dopamine response, right? Now, when I worked in the corporate world for about 10 years between, it's 2004 to 2014, I gained 200 pounds because I worked. My client base was desperate corporate lawyers, right? Who constantly keep themselves in a state of, cortisol overdose, right? Adrenaline overdose, right? And that's why they do what they do, because they get a sexual stimulant without and by being impotent, Me, not so much. I didn't care. I knew I could do what I do, so I did. And they paid me extraordinarily well, meaning I only had to work 11 weeks of the year of the 52, and sometimes even less. And I had more money than I knew what to do with, right? And I made investments. I made money on my investments. I did all of that for a good 10 years. And even during the '08 crash, I mean, that's when I actually made more money, And and I was explaining this all to you, and then all of a sudden I got a phone call from some really old friends, people I've known 40 years. So, and that is the real joy of life is when you have friends, really good friends that love you, that always, think about all the good times we had. And that's why I left the channel, because I wanted to talk freely with them about things and people and all other stuff. And you didn't need to be part of it, right? So I just bopped out and came back. But the joy of hearing and they are way different from me, right? But instead of being, how to put it, threatened or upset or any of the above things that other people can get with me, um, I pushed way past that with them to the point where they realized that those things I used to get upset about me were the lessons they needed to see and understand, which they did. And now they're so much happier. They're still who they are. and they still go on about things that I kind of giggle at. But we have this common ground of understanding that nothing really matters except when we get together and dance, and we dance, and they have a really nice backyard. We EB and I and H built a great fire pit, and we make these big bonfires, and we dance around the thing. They have a great stereo. In the wintertime, we turn on the tunes that we like, and we dance, dance, dance. And they were kids. We danced, for years. As those kids, I've known their kids since they were born. So I've known them all the way up, right? And now they're in their 30s and or in between. And I see them. All they do is talk about the times that we danced and that we had fun. Never about the miserable things they experienced, because we went through times where it was tough, and but all they can remember is the insightful things the stories I told them, and the story we're part of. Was the other thing we were going on about that. And so someone once asked about aliens, adoption, and etc. And this is a good story. You might find this interesting. So E and I decided we were going to go to a art opening in New York, and he and I and H2 were the art Turks of our time, right, of the 70s and 80s and 90s, and we had different. The best thing was that we were different disciplines. I mean, E and I were photographers, but that's all he was. That was it for him, and he's a great photographer and a great visionary of photography, a great photo historian, a great photo writer, and he's got one heck of a amazing photo. I mean, I had some great photos, and my father threw them away. He has has archival every photo he's ever taken. So, and a lot of them are of me. So there are a lot of people like E who were my photo journalist. They documented me. So, and there are a lot of people, because I had a lot of friends who were photographers, really well-known photographers. So they all have pictures of me. So as time goes by, they slip out into the digital world and the etc. But anyway, E and I were driving from around Atlanta to New York City, right? And we kind of weaved our way, because it was a big snowstorm. And stupidly, we decided that we could make it through. And I was driving my Datsun B210, my trusty B210. And we got to, Johnson City, from there, and got, we went from Atlanta kind of there to the 40, and then went across and then hit 81. And we were trying to stay, because the snowstorm was supposed to be like along the coast. So we were kind of coming to New York from above. And when we passed Roanoke, it started really, I mean, it was snowing the whole time, but it really started to come down. I mean, starting to come down. And we should have gotten off the road right then and there, but we just kept going. And we hit an altered state because it was a total whiteout. You couldn't see the highway. The only thing you could see were the like reflectors that were, up so the snowplows know where the road is. And they're like every 100 yards. So I was driving like between that, right? And we got on the, so we got to, and we're past Roanoke, and we're going, and we're going, and we're going. And we passed 66 and Stanton. Well, we passed Stanton. That was when reality changed, and we were going and going and going and going, and all of a sudden, I mean, it was like we were beyond stoned, and like I said, we should have gotten off the road, like at Roanoke or at Stanton. Stanton was still reality, but once we got past 20 miles past Stanton, going into Pennsylvania, heading towards into Pennsylvania, that's when it got, because the only light there was, I mean, we were seeing lights of towns and lights, there were some places they had light, on the highway, right? Where there's a big intersection with two highways were coming together, they had lights, right? But even when we lost, there was no light. The only light was our headlights into the snow. And the snow was just coming down, and it's like, and I let go of the wheel, and the car was driving itself. And E and I looked at each other, and all of a sudden there was a monkey on my lap, right? And it was wearing a bellhop's uniform, and it was, driving, and there was a monkey on top of his shoulders, and another monkey down on the floor with the pedals, and we were just zipping along 81, right, heading into Pennsylvania, and there was no light except our headlights, and we were going and going and going and going and going and going and going, and there was no time. And Eric turned on the radio, and it was the first time I ever heard Art Bell in Coast to Coast, right? And we're listening to it, and he's talking about flying saucers and aliens, and then all of a sudden it kind of drifts away, all on AM, not FM, all on AM. So that drifts away, and another radio station come, and it's Art Bell talking about something else, right? And and we're like listening to that, my hands aren't on the wheel, the monkey's on my lap, there's a monkey on his shoulders, and there's one on the floor, and we're going and going, and it's like the snow is coming at us so hard that it's like the static of a TV, when there's no image and it's just all white, and Art Bell. And he talked about aliens. Then he talked about conspiracy theory of Kennedy's death, with Bill William. What was that guy's name? He wrote Beyond Pale Horse. And I used to do these conferences in New York in the 80s that are now like whoop-de-doo things. And what was nice about doing those conferences back in those days, the people who were at them were the ones who, were like Preston Nichols and Al Bielek and his brother Duncan, a guy I knew who was basically a alien Nordic, right? And his wife slash girlfriend slash whatever, he used to call her his queen, and she was an Egyptian goddess. She was one of the goddesses that are in the Egyptian, theology, right? And the old, the back in the day of the Pharaoh, those guys, before the Pharaoh, those guys, the Anunnaki, right? And so it's like they're all in the car with us. The radio show, I'm looking in the mirror, and then all of a sudden they're the big tall Nordic and the Egyptian princess are like in our back seat, and the monkeys are on my lap and down pushing the pedals. And whether it was the sticky tie stick, or because we had a number of those blunts, or what it was I was not driving that car, right? And so all of a sudden the car kind of goes off, exits, and flies along the road and into a gas station, right? And there's this gas station, right? And we fill her up, right? And the monkeys get out and put the nozzle in there, and no credit card, no cash, just they do it, goes from empty to full, and we're back out on the road. And now there is, the Nordic and the Egyptian, and there's Albilic and Duncan, and and we're just, and this is a little Datsun B210, and so we're going and 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 we're going, and all of a sudden, you know, and it's like hours have passed, and there is no, we've already gone to 12 different art bells with, you know, coast to coast, like we've already had like 85 hours of radio. And I mean, that's the only way we can, because we hear the opening theme song and the closing, theme song. He does this kind of South American sound, and and the opening is like something very akin to Doctor Who, and we're just flying along, and it's like a mind-boggling experience, right? And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And no one's watching. It's 9:30, give or take, here in Eastern Standard Time land. And anyone wants to get a hold of me on the good old internet, that is, you can reach me at the dudeawake42 at gmail, dudeawake42 at gmail, dudeawake42 at gmail. And we're having a nice little retrospective of many things, and it's my birthday. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Not quite a specific day, but all of February is my birthday. And in reality, all 364 days of the year is my birthday. And the one day that's not is the day I celebrate with my mother, before she gave me birth. Right? And that's in a few more days. But my friends know this, and so the last the chat before this chat, I've done, this is the third, First one I did a little bit before I made dinner and, finished doing laundry. And then I did another one. And then I was, a friend of mine called, and I wanted to have that freedom of talking about anything on the phone call and not have to have it revolve around the show, right? So I just kind of bopped out. Now here I am back after that, and that was like so much fun. It so pleased my heart, right? And I've had other people call in the last, week, 2 weeks leading up to, and that was really great because I was, iced in here at Ice Station Zebra. Um, the man who owns, not no, who pays the tax, because no one owns the hill. The hill is a spiritual temple. The school is a spiritual temple of George and Inga's spirit, right? And it is beyond anyone's, no matter what anyone does this place, and whether the person who is here now, sells it or stays here, he doesn't own it. He just pays the taxes. He's, the deed is in his name, just like it was in mine. But I never owned this place. I served, right? I made it happy. It was like a puppy dog, right? And it still is. It still loves me, and it is here, and it's very pleased that I'm here, doing my best to help the person whose name is on the deed of this place, right? Or he truly is alone, and as we all are. See, that's what people don't realize, is that we're all alone, right? And that existential dynamic is taken advantage of by that few cockroaches who think they rule the place, just like people who may or may not own this place, have their name on the deed. And again, so the guy whose name's on the deed right now, he did a lot of things this place, that were good, fix this and fix this and fix that. Because when George built this place, he had no idea what the heck he was doing, because this place wasn't a building that could be quantified by anything that was known as code. He wired his place with phone wire in the walls because he was using mostly fluorescent light that take no current. So he said, "Oh, I can use phone wire." Well, some moron who comes and puts a outlet on that same circuit of 22 gauge phone wire, and then tries to run a 1500-watt heater. That's why they had a fire upstairs. Back 20 years ago, and this place is almost 60 years old. So it's all concrete, and it burnt the roof off the place, which gave them the opportunity to make it bigger up there. Because I used to have these big patios all the way around, and George didn't know how to really. He should have graded the concrete so the water, when it fell, would go off to the side. He just kind of made it lumpy and had little lakes of water that would turn into ice and crack the concrete. He had no expansion lines. He just kind of, expansion line has to go through all the way through the concrete, not just make a line on the top. I mean, George had no idea what he was doing. And he basically, all the materials he built this place with were out of dumpsters, right? He had a friend who was the guy who tore things down. And so a demolisher. So that's why all the windows are single pane glass. And if, like when the person who has his name on the deed here got upset one day and threw a glass through the window, luckily he threw it with such force the glass went out, because if the glass went in, it would have sliced us up. I mean, every inch of that glass is like a razor blade, right? So all the windows here are like momentary razor blades, meaning at any point, if something breaks that window, that glass is going to be, it's not safety glass, right? So, because these windows are made in the 20s, So that's the interesting thing about this place. So, and that's George's presence on here, right? Then my presence was just to be here. I mean, this wasn't really my home. This was because I had a home in the Florida Keys. I had a house in, Stuart, Florida. I had, properties all over Tennessee and North Carolina, and in Lynchburg. I owned a big factory building. In B-Town, I owned two unbelievably interesting buildings that were built before the Civil War. And I had another kind of quasi-factory building in, it's either called South Boston, North Boston, or Little Boston, but it's right off of 540 coming out of Lynchburg, going over the Blue Ridge Mountains into 81. So, and I had some other stuff here in Roanoke. And I bought all of that for under $100,000. Meaning, why I had it all was that the asking price was so unbelievably low. It was like stupid for me not to, right? So I bought all this stuff, right? And when I sold it all for really like 6 times more than what I paid for it. And that is the essence of real estate. Buy low, sell high, right? And that's pretty much the essence of the mercantile mentality, But in the mercantile mentality, steal and sell. No, I didn't steal anything, but people just wanted to get rid of it. No one wanted it. I was there. So I took advantage. And that's how I afforded this place without having to really need it, want it. I only bought it because Inga, who owned it, was in her, it was her school. George had died. Inga probably had to, let's see, that was in 05. She died in 08. So she had no money. She was hurting. The people, they had all these little houses on their 100-acre or so. And this place basically is so shamanically strong that, like I said, it's like a puppy dog. So it doesn't really understand humans. So people come up here and it reads their energy and it says, this person wants to be a drug addict because they're doing drugs. So that makes them a drug addict, right? This person wants to be an alcoholic because they're drinking more than just a simple libation every now and then. They become alcoholics. Oh, this person wants to be, you know, not successful, so they're not successful. In my thing, it said, "Oh, I love this guy. He just wants to be happy and make others happy." So that's what I've been doing ever since I bought this place, right? Even when I worked for the Desperate Lawyers, right? So Inga one day, because I knew her from New York, and I basically, I just stumbled on her because one of the guys who was like the Disney, the cartoon about the cricket, not Jiminy Cricket, but the grasshopper, who wore the scarf and played a violin, and he just, liked to make music and dance around and have a good time, right? And the ants work really hard, 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 right? So, the winter comes and grasshopper is about, and so the ants bring him into their house and and that was the guy who owned Dumpington, which was, George's dump, where he dumped all the crap from all the buildings he built. And it was right on a cliff. And it was like New York. He just kept putting garbage there until it settled, more garbage settled, until it was strong enough to support another structure. So he built a log cabin there. And it's kind of cute. But, everything he's built is George, George, George. It's all George. George, ego. So these buildings are being held up with just ego energy, right? So everyone's in it. It's like, and so I never really lived here because I understood that if you live here, it's gonna, addict you to whatever neuroses you have, right? So, I found this place through the grasshopper musician guy, right? And I used to come up here and bring food and a bottle of wine, and I'd make him dinner, and he liked that. And he had herbs, so I liked that. So and he was an interesting, well-educated, came from a well-to-do family, so he never really had to worry about paying the bills, right? He made enough being a musician to pay the bills, and and he just kind of, and he had a different girl up here, every 4 days, because he'd have a gig, meet some girl, bring her up here, and it's a pretty amazing place. He had a jacuzzi out on his deck that looked right out into the valley. I mean, it was quite an amazing space. And so he was fun. He liked me. I mean, he doesn't believe in anybody or anything. And, when he meets people, he thinks they're all scamming. So when he met me, I was in a bar reading people's palms. And I basically read his whole band's palm, and wow, guy, this guy's amazing. Go over, and he went over, and he just basically, oh, you're a total phony, blah blah blah. So I read him, and he like fell through the floor because I told him stuff about that he hides from everyone, right? Because I do my best reading, so I have no idea who the person is. Because if I know you, then I'm prejudiced by what I think you are. But if I have no idea who you are, all the little spidey sense, all the little antennas that Sister Holy Roller Skate of Hitler's Rifle Squad, Catholic school, rearranged my neural net for the better. I mean, yes, it took some issues, and so whenever I hear people, oh, I had such a hard time, I was bullied. Well, how would you like your esophagus crushed, your jaw broke, your left eye smashed, your eyeball hanging out, and your ear, the little bones in this one, so you can't hear out of it, right? And your head, like she hit me in the head with a cinder block, and I was young, and my little skull hadn't really totally firmed up, so it took me good 3 years to get over that. But by her doing that, it put me in an environment for those 3 years of amazing people. My cardinal godfather took care of me. Dr. Black, who brought me into the world, I went to her hospital, and she developed whole technologies. I was like the $6 million man. We have the technology. We can put them back together. So they did, but not as what I was, right? And so after my body kind of healed, which took about 2 years, I couldn't talk, and then I was stayed with my godfather at St. Patrick's, which was quite interesting. And then he sent me to Garden City to a sanctuary run by the Marinols. And these were all scholars. There were 20 guys, 30 women. They didn't wear a uniform. They wore, civic clothes, and they all had PhDs. They were all brilliant. So there was a guy who was an audiographer. So he figured out what was going on with my ears. Another guy, ophthalmologist, he figured out what was going on in my eye. Another person, speech therapist, right? And reconstructed my jaw. And my esophagus doesn't pass air like it's designed to. So it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to with your larynx, right? And so it does makes it very difficult to speak. And by that, my brain kind of works pretty fast, so it would cause a stutter. I had a very severe stutter, so I didn't really talk. I listened a great deal, so I became quite the listener, quite the conscious listener, right? So, and I spent 3 years to get better, but still messed up. 2 years with those guys that they rewired me and got me to be me that I am now. But I'm not the me I am now was not the kid I was in first grade, right? And then I ended up years later, 4 years later, in third grade, right? And I was a little bit older than anybody, but I was a peanut of a kid. That whole experience kind of stunted my growth a tad. And so, I was about, 4'8", when I was, maybe 10. And, then I had an amazing grammar school experience because it was a school that had been formed because it used to be a farmland neck of the woods of Long Island, right on the border of Nassau and Suffolk County, out near Oldfield, and there were farms and estates with really super rich people, and golf courses that had no clubhouse, just a golf course, because the people had such gigantic houses and had parties in them. They didn't need, a clubhouse. They had their own clubs, right? And so I lived right next to this place called the Anderson Estate. That now is just a bunch of ticky-tack $1 million houses, But when I was there, it was just Mr. Anderson and his staff, because everyone in his family, all his brothers and sisters, everyone in his family, he was the last. And his wife and kids and you name it, so he was in his, 90s or late 80s when I met him. And then for 6 years, seven, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 6 years. He was another mentor of mine, and he was amazing. He had experienced life from 18, he was born in 1892, I think, and he died we moved out of there in the 70s, and he died in the 80s. So he was about 90 something when he died. Anyway, so I had this amazing thing. So the school, so now people like my parents, upper middle class, not rich, upper middle class, right? We're buying houses in these cul-de-sacs. And this was part of one of the farmlands that one guy who wanted to build a house for himself, but, like a strip that was like, quarter mile wide and 2 miles long, right? And it was called the Lane. And he built 8 houses on it, right? And he actually built 3 houses and made lots that he sold that people built houses on. And so my dad bought one, and it was quite a nice place, and the land was quite nice. And the beauty of my parents is that I had nothing to do with them pretty much until I was 32. And so all the kind of angst, like the guy who has his name on the deed of this property, pays the tax. And actually he doesn't. His parents do, I think. I really don't know, but I'm just suppositioning that. Um, when I bought this place, I had a good cash flow, and so when Inga said, you need to buy the school, I said, no, I don't. I have, a blah. She goes, no, no. She goes, I want you to go up and no one's in the A-frame. Clean it out. Probably take a month or two, and live in that, and that will drive the lady who is in the school out of it. She hasn't paid me rent in over 2 years, and I can't kick her out. And so, but just by your presence being close to her, and I know you well enough to know that you have this ability to get under people's skin, and for the better, meaning it pushes them through whatever they're stuck to. And you did it to me. I've seen you do it to all these other people, and it's for the better. And you are, you are like a really good shrink. And I didn't actually become a shrink at that point. Um, I hadn't been working on a project that I got my shrinky certificate. I had, worked with some amazing people like Joseph Campbell and uh, Burton, who wrote Wisdom of the Overself, and Dr. Quigley of the CFR, and lots of other people. So I had lots of accreditations of experience, working with people that other people, that's how I went from one interesting event to the next, right? And so, and I had jobs where, I was the director of a theater department at the Newark College of Engineering. I was the first guy when this thing was built, and they wanted the guy who I worked for, Lester Polikoff, one of the greatest. Go look him up. He worked for Joe Melziner, and Joe Melziner made modern theater. He brought electricity. Fresnel, Lico, Scoop, everything that's used in theater and movies, Joe Melziner invented, right? And all the other dynamics of how to, like modern, um, um, you know, um, in filmmaking, there's the director and then the cinematographer. That whole discipline was developed by Joe Melziner. And Lester Polikoff was his first assistant, first, best boy, and I was Lester's best boy. So that's how I got the job. I was 21, The guy really needed somebody to do it. I saw him in August. The thing was supposed to open on September, and he couldn't find anyone to take the job. So I did, right? So I had that kind of curriculum vitae, right? And every time I get into a situation, I do my best, right? So Inga knew all of this, because she lived in New York. I worked at a foundry where she cast her bronze statues. That's where I first met her, like in the early 70s. And then I meet her, in 2003 when the Grasshopper brought me up here. So, he said, "Oh, you got to meet my landlady, Inga." So I said, "That name sounds familiar." And so I walked into her place, and she looked up at me and said, "Oh, there you are." And I said, "Oh, there you are." And that was it. It was like, 40 years had gone by, 70, 80, 90, 30 years had gone by. And it was like, I just saw her the other day. So, and George had gone, and she was just sitting in her house, and we just had the grand old time for about 2 months, 3 months. That's when she said, "You need to go up to the A-frame," and I did. And and I did things like I took the woman who was there. She just threw her garbage out, and I just collected it and took it down. And she, "Stop taking my garbage!" I mean, she was that, which pretty much fits hand in glove with the man who lives here now. I mean, she acted the same way. Now, 8 years later, I was at a party, and I'm talking to this really hot-looking babe, and we're talking and we're talking and sharing, and she goes, "Al, it's me." I go, "Me," and she goes, "It's me." And I said, and she goes, that's right. I said, but you lost 50 pounds and you look great. And, you look like a troll when I saw you last. She goes, well, I was a troll. But I have to thank you for getting me out of there. My whole life changed. Once I left that hill, my life changed. And she goes, and you bought the school. I said, yep, still do. Still got it. And so what happened was she left. Then Inga said, you need to buy the school. And I said, and why do I need to buy the school? And she goes, because I need, money. I have no money and I'm not dying. So I need, and my children really aren't taking care of me. And so I said, okay. And she goes, now you have to talk to my son-in-law and he's going to do all the business. And I said, okay. And so, I'm not a dummy. I went down to, when she said, oh, you need to buy the school, I went to the county and I went to the assayer and I said, so how much is this place worth? And he said, it's worth $45,000, building and property. I said, okay. So I knew that's about as much if you went through a realtor, what it would cost. Now, I didn't go through a realtor. I went through Inga, who owned it, and her son-in-law. And he tried to be Mr. Businessman, which he isn't. So I showed up at his office, which was in a strip mall, and he sold, when you go to a restaurant and there is the placemat and it has the advertisements on the placemat, that was his business, and other things like that, right? Coasters, and he wasn't like Elon Musk, but he really loved Inga, and I just looked at him and said, mm-hmm. And so he goes, I want 125,000, and I said, is that what it's worth? Oh yes. I have other offers. Now, I could have said, good, go get the other offers. See you later, bye. But I didn't, because I knew Inga needed the money. And I had it. And I actually had to spend something close to that because I had sold a few other properties. And without buying something else, I would have had to pay a good deal of tax. So I bought it because I knew this guy really loved Inga. He wasn't going to take a cut. It was all going to go to Inga, and it would, take care of her financially until she died. More than her son would do. He never did anything. He was in Germany. You saw him, the bald guy who was, that was him, her son, who looked just like George. Spitting, cloned, and had the same kind of ego and same kind of, George had more talent. At least George knew how to, spray paint. So, and he had the ego of an artist. That's how you are. If you want to be economically successful, you kind of have to have George's. But he didn't quite have that. You have to have a certain level of talent, and George's talent rate was down here. Now, Inga's talent rate was way up here, but she didn't have that kind of ego. She had this, saintly presence, and she was pretty amazing. And they were living on. She did a book when she lived in Sweden. Lana. She lived in Sweden, the land of Lana, and it's interesting. No one's showing up. I started out. The first one was around 5:00. The next one was around 7. This one's about 9:48. I'm telling some good stories. I've gotten some thumbs up, but no one's sticking around. I wonder why. Well, I know this will get put up on my channel because the other two went up there. So that's what it is. And people watch that channel almost as much when it's not live, which is a good thing. And I urge you all to to take down don't take them down, but share, put them on a medium. Optical medium would be best, like a CD-ROM, right? And but put them on a thumb drive, put them on a flash drive, put them on your hard drive, because the internet is going down relatively soon, right? Definitely sometime this year. I have a sense that it may go down in the August, September range, right? Or it might go a little bit before, because I have a sense that on the 4th of July, aliens are going to invade. And it'll be just another Hollywood false flag, right? Just like the murder of JFK, just like the Bay of Tonkin in Vietnam. We were attacked. No, we weren't. And then, 40 years later, the evidence comes out that all of the Vietnam War, all of the blood and change, and was for naught. It was for so Lockheed and Boeing and General Dynamic and all those folks could make more money. And the same with what happened in Iraq. Oh, they got tubes. They got yellow cake. Oh my God! No weapons of mass destruction. Sorry. We knew. Rumsfeld knew that because he was working for a weapons manufacturer when he wasn't in power before. Georgie Porgy and President Dickhead took over in the neoconservatives and neoconservative, neoliberal. A perfect example. Obama's a neoliberal. He killed more guys in Afghanistan and Iraq than Georgie Porgy. Georgie Porgy kicked it off, but Obama. Bomby boy, basically, and then he started the Arab Spring, and which kicked off the Syrian War, 11 years of total genocide, and the destruction of Libya, which was one of the better holistic countries on the planet, and everything in between, right? And ISIS was just an extension of the, neoconservative, neoliberal, what I like to call the neo-insane clown party, the NICP, right? The NICP. And that's who's ruling. And, the NICP is the poster boy of who's ruling, right? So, Inga, said, I need to buy the school. So I actually did, because I sold, the property in Lynchburg, the property in B-Town, the property in South Boston. And, so I had to pay tax on all that. And I made a hefty little profit. And so I gave it, the profit anyway, I gave to Inga so she could live. Her children did not do that. Because they're so, it's all about me, it's all about me, all about me. And they were basically self-medicating themselves, Pretty much everyone in the first world self-medicates themselves, either by alcohol or pharmaceutical drugs or food or sex or any one of a zillion other, spending their whole life on the screen. So, like I said, aliens invade on the 4th of July. And when I say invade, I mean they won't, they will come and land. And if you ever saw Gene Roddenberry's 1990s, after he did Star Trek and did the films a little bit, and he made his own little TV series. He made a couple of TV series, but the one that kind of got on air and lasted a bit was this thing, Earth Final Conflict or something like that, with the caretakers coming to visit. And anyway, so that was a very interesting show. It was Gene Roddenberry, he, in the future, they will call him a great purveyor of the things to come. Very similar to H.G. Wells. Again, my suggestion is that you read 2 books that H.G. Wells wrote. Although everything he wrote was great, you should read it. But ones I like best is The Outline of History. And that book, when he wrote that in the early 20th century, by 1950, that book was the second most read book in the world. That's why he became rich. Right? That's when he could retire. He sold, it took off. And the only book more read than that book till 1950 was the Bible. But more than anything else, you know, millions and millions and millions of copies, right? Before modern advertising and media. It was just that good. And the book he wrote just before World War II was a book called Things to Come. So go read those two books. So read those two books and then put it, see Gene Roddenberry, and you can see, like, Star Trek, 1968, 69, or 67, 68, 69. He has the replicator. He has zero point energy. He has the flip phone. He has the laser gun. He has all these things that are now what we got now, especially the communicator. He was the freaking flip phone. It was like, so he knew what was coming. And so the thing, Final Conflict, or whatever that is, thing he did in the 90s, you should watch it with what we've experienced so far, because he basically pegged everything. So he did that in the early or mid 90s. I don't know when he died, but it's yes, okay. Gene Roddenberry.
According to Wikipedia, Sunbury is a city in Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, United States.
I really, really can hear what I say. Gene Roddenberry.
According to Wikipedia, Eugene Wesley Roddenberry was an American television screenwriter, producer, and creator of Star Trek, the original series, and its sequel spin-off series Star Trek, the animated series, and Star Trek, The Next Generation.
So let's see. He died in 91. So the series that he did, what happened to Roddenberry? So they only talk. Oh, here we go. Let's see. I'll go back to other TV series that Gene Roddenberry produced. Oh, he did Andromeda. Well, that's interesting. Star Trek, the original. Let's see. 80s TV series. See, that's the problem with digital history. It's not very concise or complete, right? So let's see. Let's look at this. Yes, Earth Final Conflict. Okay, let's see. Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict.
Here is some information about Earth Final Conflict. This intriguing sci-fi action series is set on Earth in the near future.
Doesn't even say that it was Gene Roddenberry. Yes, created by Gene Roddenberry at the very end. So it ran from October 6th. When did it 97, 5 seasons. So if it lasted 5 seasons, it's a pretty good series. So, so he died in the 80s. So this is something he put together before he died. So yeah, from 97 to 5 seasons. So go check that out. Earth Final Conflict. It's quite interesting. So it had lots of different people, not just the guys who started it out in it. So 5 seasons, yep. That's lots of different people. So anyway, so Roddenberry was a visionary, and so was there are a lot of people. And what's truly interesting is that I had the great blessing to be around many great visionaries, and these folks saw me as their friend, and the ones that are still alive still consider me a friend. And there's something really deep and affectionate about having friends that you've had for 50 years that totally love you, right? And you heard that little bit of the phone conversation with the friends, from the last little inscription of this today's YouTube channel. So anyway, I, go to Inga's son-in-law, and and he looks at me because he's in a suit and he's got his office and he's got a business selling, restaurant placemats, and so he has this big idea of him as a real, um, you know, great, guy who's exceptional, but in reality, he's totally got a self-loathing thing going on inside him from his childhood, right? And that's kind of where things start, is in people's childhoods. And even the most insignificant thing can be stuck into your brain as an earwig, And the thing is, at the earlier part of your life. So my earliest part of my life, I was murdered by my mother's, umbilical cord, and I was saved, just by chance. I was in the right place at the right time. There was this doctor who kicked the knee out of this stupid doctor who was trying to kill me, pushed the other guy out of the way, and put me back in my mother's uterus and unwrapped the umbilical around my neck, and then put an oxygen mask on my mother and gave her a full blast of oxygen so that oxygen would go into me. Took the cigarette out of her mouth, and she, banged her with oxygen and nitrous oxide to put my mom out, and and to give me a chance of living. And so, because nitrous oxide is a thing that actually increases blood flow in your body. So it increased it in my mom, and it increased it in me, and she was getting 90% oxygen and the 10% nitrous oxide to kind of knock her out, and she kept me in there for a good at least 20-30 minutes, and then she took me out like easy bake oven, and I, instead of being blue, I had a nice pinkish glow on me, but my esophagus had been really damaged because these guys nearly popped my head off like a kick, right? And so from that until I was 10, I died a number of times. A nun tried to murder me. I spent 3 years and a bit being put back together. I couldn't talk, and then when I could talk, I stuttered severely, and then I was enabled to speak as you hear me now. And how I speak the way I speak is that I was taught, ethnography, where words came from, what words mean, how to use words correctly. and to not speak unless you are using the correct word. I kind of got trained to do that, and that got rid of my esophagus being fixed and made as good as it's going to get. It enabled me to get enough wind through my voice box, and this ability to focus completely on what I say when I say it enabled me to speak well. And the fact that I could read extremely well and remember what I read, went together as a nice little package. But it wasn't until I went to grammar school, because I didn't really speak, because I was listening. I am an active listener. And because this ear was damaged, I hear other things that people don't hear. Now, if you go into another room, I can't hear you. You have to speak in front of me, because I can read lips, and not like I can completely read lips, but within the context of my neural net, that's just another thing that allows me to understand what people are speaking to me. So I really need to look at you when you're speaking if you want me to hear, have me understand exactly what you're saying. Right? And if you're not, I find that point very gratifying to me, because then I don't hear you at all, and I don't need to hear you, and you basically don't exist. But if you want to interact with me, I am the listener, and I was trained to speak in a story motif. That's why I'm a griot, and I was told I was a griot, back when I was 8 or 9, whatever I was, when I was being trained. And at 10, the easy bake oven, bing, and I came out and I went to grammar school. I went to a grammar school that was amazing, because I was the first third grade, we were the first third grade class, because that whole area had been very rural and very rich. So the rich people went to private schools. There were a couple of them in the neighborhood. The rest went to a public school, and basically Little Red, schoolhouse kind of public school. And when the school was put together, the grammar school had been the high school, which was in the town of the North Shore School District. And it was a big high school, and because all the kids from the Little Red School things went to the high school, right? Kindergarten to 8th grade in the Little Red Schoolhouse. So in 3rd grade at grammar school, there were all these cliques of there were 12 of these Little Red schoolhouses in the school district, and they put them all in the old high school, and we were being taught. And we were being taught totally different than anybody ever taught me, right? In a real conscious, we're building a new middle school, a new high school, and we're turning the high school into the grammar school. So we're not just going to do the same thing that everybody else does. We're going to try and do our best. So it was in New York State. New York State at the time had a very good state education system. So they took all the best stuff from it. And so basically our grammar school was based on music, art, science, math, right? And literature. I mean, that was the art part. And so we had theater, we had all this kind of stuff, but really, like I took in 6th grade biology, and so I took it again in 8th grade when we had sex education, and then when I went to prep school, super duper, highly, rich. I mean, the best education you can have. The biology class I got from Mr. O'Neill I took biology in college too, and the 6th grade biology I learned was far better than anything that I got afterwards, right? Now, what I learned in 6th grade was great. That's, so why I took, biology 3 other times was that it was a great way to get an A, because I already learned everything. So I didn't even have to pay attention, right? I already knew it. And the stuff I knew was far better than the crap that they were, so I was, well, that? Oh, wow. And that education that I got in that grammar school was far superior to that one I got in prep school. So when I went to prep school, I was, because I had a leg up, because I had this grammar school here, right? And I learned how to read really quickly. And even though I didn't speak much, when I did speak, it was like, whoa. So that's why I was pretty good in theater, because I would live the character, right? And not feel at all, um, anxious. I didn't really have stage fright, right? And not only did I be a main character in whatever play I played in, I usually did the set, the lights, the directing, the whole ball of wax. And what was truly made it work was that I never had to be the boss. I basically was like a team effort. Everything I do is a team effort, right? So grammar school, team. So when I first day and I'm at grammar school, I got my little brown bag. I'm looking for a place to have lunch. I go to a table. Don't sit here. You're not one of us. Don't sit here. You're not one of us. I went around. And there was a table that nobody was sitting at. I'll sit at them. So this kid comes to me. Can I have lunch with you? And I said, sure. My name's JP. Oh, hey, Jay. How you doing, buddy? He says, pretty good. What'd you get for lunch? And I said, peanut butter and jelly. Oh, I love that. You want to trade? Sure. I get the sandwich. It's like homemade bread with meatloaf and mashed potatoes and that kind of, ketchup sauce that people put on meatloaf. And, a great little piece of pie. And I mean, whoever made that was like, whoa. So we're munching down the sandwich, and he goes, you want to see my gun? And he's wearing a suit, jacket, vest, white shirt, little bow tie, corduroy pants, brown shoes, right? Sure. And he opens his thing, and under his vest, he actually has a Walter PBK. He has the James Bond, and he puts it out. And first, he takes out a little box. He opens the box. He puts out a silk piece of material, and he puts down a little metal brush and a little screwdriver and a little thing of lubricant. And he takes the gun out and he takes it apart. And he goes through the whole process of you put the safety on, open up the chamber, make sure there's not a bullet in there. There should never be a bullet in your gun. You have a holster gun, should not have a bullet in the chamber. Then take out the clip. Then you take this and take that off, and then take the spring out, then take the barrel up, and then take the mechanism out, and then you look at it and see if it needs to be cleaned. Okay. Where have I been? I've been right here. I've been having little issues with the old internet and the John, and he almost threw me out. And anyway, but I came on at 5, and then I came on at 7ish, and then I came on again. I've been on 3 times. And the show is about addiction, right? And how that fits into the control motif, right? And I was just giving a little thumbnail of my life, in that how all these, why I am, I used to have a nickname as perfect timing. I was always right when I should be someplace right at the right time. Right? Not when I said I'd be there, or not when I, but right when it was the perfect time to be there. Perfect timing. They didn't call me, but I got very good at being, when I'd say, my Aunt Gracie was really a stickler for being on time. So anyway, there is issues with the internet. And also, I'm going to leave the school, because I almost left today. The person who owns the place, basically. And, but with my skill set of just being patient and listening and giving the right dynamic, I'll probably be here for at least a week or so. But spring is coming, and as soon as it's time to go back, I'm going to go back. And once I go back, gang, I will not have access to the internet like I do now. So you should definitely remember, you want to get a hold of me, the dude awake 42 at Gmail, and we can have a more personal relationship on that. And this month is, it's just like, you know, February is Black History Month, right? And I am an African American that's melanin challenged. When I was a little boy, my mother's uterus and her umbilical cord tried to murder me, almost did. And if it wasn't for Dr. Black, who saved my life, I would be dead. But perfect timing, she was there. She kicked one doctor in the leg, and he fell to the ground. And she shoved out of the way, pushed me back to the uterus, uncurled the umbilical cord, because these guys were trying to pull me out. I was a breech baby, and they're trying to pull me out. Wrong thing to do. And the thing was, and they were about to pop my head off. She, like I said, got rid of those doctors and then put me back in, put an oxygen mask on my mother's face, and gave her 90% oxygen and 10% nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide opens up all of your veins and arteries, and it enables the passage of blood and oxygen to the organs. And so that happened to my mom, and that happened to me, and she kept me in there like the easy bake oven for 20 minutes or so, and then she took me out and then put the clips on my mom's thing, and left with me into her little laboratory, where she put me in an incubator that she had designed that allowed not only to keep me warm, but to change the barometric pressure of that environment, and to also manipulate the atmosphere, that she could make anything, oxygen, nitrogen, you name it. She could put any gas in that thing. And she had these little rubber things that she could put her hands in there, so she could take my blood and put me on an IV. And that's what saved my life, all of the above. She was my doctor until I was about 12, right? And she saved my life a number of times. And when I came home, my parents didn't want me in their bedroom, and they lived in a small house, and there were 4 others there. And so they put me on the sunroom that had no heat in February, and ice was forming on the wings. And they put me in a dresser drawer of a dresser that was full of mold, and and had paint with lead, and the lead was dust. And again, my Uncle Steve showed up a day after I was placed in that, and my mother was feeding me on formula, not her breast, but the stuff where the stuff in the box wasn't half as nutritious as the cardboard that the stuff came in. And so he said, fuck this shit. And he basically got me a crib that was made out of cedar. And he brought his plumbers in and put a gigantic radiator in that sunroom and hooked it first off the boiler and put the thermostat in out there with me. So it was like the Caribbean. And the steam would go up and cover the glass with steam, and the coldness would turn into ice, and the sun would come through, and the whole room was covered in rainbows. And I was out there until I was 6 months old, where I got tired of being in my crib. And I remember all of this. I remember myself being in my mother's uterus. I remember growing in my mother's uterus. I remember making the deal with Bob that I would come here and be me, right? He set me on this path. And now, I see it all as a story, not like I hear voices from God. And that's why I don't call Bob God, because you know what God spelled backwards is? Dog. So anyway, and that's why I have such an affinity with dogs. So, and other animals, pretty much all of them. And so, and cats take a long time because they feel my dogness so much that they have issues. But once they realize who I am, they're okay. But it's that I'm such a dog boy that they or upset, not upset, but cautious. So I basically had this experience being able to remember everything. And it's pretty much everything that I hear. And I don't hear voices. I mean, but I hear other frequencies. But so when I was an infant, I got out of my crib. I crawled over to an electric socket, and I don't quite know where I got the knife from, but I stuck it in the electric socket. And, I had a 50-50 chance. I could have stuck it into the neutral and not got anything, but I stuck it in the hot wire, and I was, ooh, yeah, ooh, like this. And I was an infant, so I wasn't grounded. I was known, in electric parlay, we call it a floating ground. So I was getting a bit of a charge, but nothing. And I could feel the consciousness of the electricity, right? I was like talking to it, and I was feeling it, right? Understanding it. It's understanding its flow, its resonance, its presence, right? And the youngest sister I have, she was the queen bee because she was the baby, and the other two babies before her died, right? I mean, after her died. The babies between her and me, there were two others that died. And so when I was forming in my mom, she was drinking like a fish and smoking like a chimney, and that was going straight into me. So I kind of, that's why I'm not a big fan of alcohol and tobacco. I mean, I know them as tools, but I don't use them as self-medication, right? And that's what most people do, because we're living in a sociopathic world, and the only way people can cope, because they have to knock out the communication that I normally feel and hear, so they have to self-medicate. So they have to we live in a world where it's a pyramid structure, right? And there's this very small group of people, close to around 1,000, that rule the world. And it's set up in a structure, meaning a level. There are all these levels of the pyramid, right? And within math, you would realize that the bottom of the totem pole, or the bottom of the pyramid, is the foundation. Foundation is the most important, not the morons at top. And the only way the morons at top can control is by setting out the agenda. So the religions, the economics, the history, all lies. It's his story, right? And so everyone is stuck in this, illusion reality, right? It's not what's going on, because the only thing that is real is love's co-creation. And our sociopathic lie of this, reptile tip of the pyramid is, an illusion. It's a set agenda. It's the other way they control is through this structure of it, because everyone wants to get to the top, right? And basically, the guys at the top tell the next level, you do this, you're going to have access to this, right? And then those people say to the guys underneath, if you do this, you'll get access to what that's how it runs. And all of that access is an illusion. It's surreal. It's doesn't mean anything. Money is like toilet paper, and history, just look what happened to Germany 3 times, before 1946, right? And pretty much it keeps war. There's never been a war that was righteous. Never. All through go all the way back 160,000 years. Babylon, Mesopotamia, all of it. Right? Phoenicia, all of them. Atlantis, Lemuria, all of them. They never quite worked out. The only thing that works is love's co-creation. That's it. Everything else is a waste of time. So, I talk to a lot of folk. I have a lot of old friends and a lot of like scholarly, powerful, who are in those layers, right? And so they talk to me because they can say stuff to me that they can't say to anybody else. And that has been since 1988. Well, really, my whole career as a human being, it has been that. But from age 9 until age 60, one of my primary careers was as an electrician, and it was a great front. I mean, when I was a itinerant scholar, and they sent me off to study things, instead of showing up in a place saying, "Oh, I'm an itinerant scholar. I'm here to study you." No, I was an electrician. I'm here to fix your washer. I'm here to fix this. I'm here. It gives me, and then I start talking to people, and they start opening up to me because there's no threat in the electrician, and he's really great. He's fixing my thing, and nothing worked, and now it all works. And he's telling me stuff that so that's pretty much has been the base of my operation, right? And it's been fine. I always, and I was saying my grandmother who brought me up from that 6 months. So what happened? I took the thing, and my youngest sister rats me out. Her name was Piggy, right? Everyone called her Piggy. Pink, little, chunky, little piggy, right? Little twirly tail, little ears. And she was all about her. It's all about me. It's all about me. And if anyone got any attention, she would scream and yell and, just kick her feet and be, just disrupt everything. So everyone, like when I was 10 years old and I survived, my Uncle Steve gave me a total cowboy outfit, right? The chaps, the vest, the hat, the 6 guns, and she went nuts. And my parents, took it away from me and gave it to her. And I never got anything new, which is one reason why I learned to appreciate whatever was given to me, A, and B, when I saw people throw stuff out, like, the clothes I am wearing right now, that John thinks so cool, I got in a dumpster. I mean, it wasn't like in a dumpster with the garbage of the food and stuff, no. Next to the dumpster, there was a paper bag that had a bunch of clothes in it. Looked at the clothes, well, these are nice, I like them. Well, obviously, they were just throwing them out. They were nice enough to put them in a paper bag all by themselves so they didn't get soiled or anything. But even if I've gotten things that have been totally skunk funk, and I got it and cleaned it, and and I got these nice jackets that are really great, but somebody just let them rot. And I cleaned them all off. I got them to the point where they weren't rotting anymore. But anyway. So I stick the knife in the electric socket on my arm. I said, help me, pluggy booming, mommy. And so my mother sees it, and I'm like, but I wasn't really getting electric. Like I said, I was sensing the consciousness of electricity, understanding it on the deepest of deep levels. And that's what physicists do. And that's what I was doing at 6 months old, right? So my mother ran over to grab me. She put her hand on the radiator, not knowing the physics of electricity, and leaned down to grab me, and she got one heck of an electric shock because she was like, whoop, right through her body. She was totally got the 110 and thrown across the living room and smashed into the coffee table, broke her arm. So then they turned the crib upside down on me, and my grandma came over. She said, that's it. She kicked over the thing, just grabbed me, and my Uncle Steve was there, and they took the crib back to my grandma's house, back to New York. So she was a good, 30 miles from my parents, which was good. That's been my safety zone for my family, 30 miles. Close enough to go see them, far enough where they don't want to come see me. And so, there we are in this apartment house in Harlem. Everyone in the apartment house comes and sees. Our upstairs neighbor, I called her Mamo, and she came from a long line of distinguished black folk, of ministers, and professors, and teachers. And during the Second World War, when they had a need for nurses in the home front, she went and they trained her to be a nurse, and they gave her so she could legally do what nurses do, administer drugs, do all that stuff. She was a really brilliant woman, was really serious about it, and learned how what normally takes average white girl to be a nurse 3 years, she did in 6 months. And they gave her an RN, and they also made her a lieutenant in the Army. And so she went all over the United States and VA setting up programs, doing this, that, and the other thing. That's where she met her husband. And they got married, and he was, a really, really scholarly guy, and was a psychologist, and yeah, but he was a black man. And so, he went off to World War II. He kept, because they would bounce him back and forth uh, between, especially in Asia, the Pacific theater. And they took her and put her in California, and he would be in the Pacific and then bring folk back and be in this hospital in California. And then, so he did that during World War II, and he did that in the Korean War. Right? And so he died in an airplane crash. Right? And so she went back to New York, and she already had 4 kids, and she had a child about 6 months after the airplane crash. And he had that child about 2 months before I was born. And so when my grandma brought me home, she's 60 something years old, and and she's not really gonna, anyway, she had her own lifestyle, but she loved me. And so this woman upstairs was one of her best friends. So that woman took me upstairs, and her older boys carried the crib up there, and she put me in her bedroom, and she had her daughter, and I was there. And when she would breastfeed us, she put her on one breast and one. So as I grew up, I called her Mamo, mammary glands, Mamo. And I was just like, Steve Martin in The Jerk. I was brought up as a black child. I'm an African American that's melanin challenged. And this was Harlem, 1950, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. And then I kind of went back to my parents in Long Island. My grandma had a house not that far from my parents, because her husband had a barbershop in New York City and one in Freeport, Long Island, there's 2 cities in Long Island, Freeport and Glen Cove. And they were both ports. And Freeport became the hot spot because Hollywood, before it went to California, was in Long Island. So all the movie stars, all the Broadway folk, all the artists who were rich and famous, A-listers, as the man who pays the tax name on the deed of the school. So they vaudeville. That was and the vaudeville stars were all there, and all the big bangs. Like um, what's his name, Benny Goodman and Arthur Godfrey and people like that lived in Freeport. So my grandfather had a barbershop right near the railroad in the big fancy building that Mr. J.P. Morgan owned, and he had the whole ground, well, the side of the building that faced the railroad. And so all those rich people who wanted to look beautiful went to his. And not only that, he had a barbershop and a beauty salon. Right? Because in the 20s, women wanted men's haircuts. And, he said, sure. All the other guys said no. And he started a beautician business that actually became much more profitable than the men's haircuts. So, but he had both, and he did both. And when I was a little boy, still living, with my grandma and my grandpa. Well, my grandpa was like pretty much in Long Island. She was in Harlem, and they had a really amazing relationship in that they had separate lives, but they shared it with each other. So they were equal partners. And I learned to have a relationship with women as equal partners. Not the boss, not the owner, not the big strong man. No, because two people, co-creating, much better. So anyway, I uh, grew up the first year and 2 months um, with Memo because that's how long I breastfed, right? And I grew up with her older boys, her two daughters, and the baby, who was like my twin, Emily, and we were inseparable, and Emily and I stayed friends and friends and friends for years until she died, and that whole family was my other family, right? But what was sad is that their brilliance, eloquency, and leadership, no good deed goes unpunished. Pretty much they all were basically murdered, right? So when I hear people go on and on what kind of emotional tragedies they've been through, I just have to feel sorry for them because here's a family who was my other family, and they basically all were murdered just because they were black. That's why I'm very, and that's why I'm very annoyed with the black movement. The movement of racial equality of the 40s, 50s, and 60s and early 70s was outstanding. But all those people got murdered, along with Mamo and their children. If you read one of my novels, Legend, it goes into that story. I don't use them per se, but what happened to them, I use in the story. I just put it 80 years in the past from their life because that's what happened to their grandfather. And you looked at his lineage, and he was from, the lineage of the Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene had children. And that lineage was Merovingian lineage. And that's where Mamo and came from. And her father was the son of this great civil rights leader who was murdered, hung on a lamppost in front of Thomas Alva Edison's Pearl Street power station. So all of these things are connected, and I see them as one long addiction to the illusion of this sociopathic world that we're in. And people don't, I tell lots of stories, and when I, weave the picture, a lot of people don't want to hear it. They get angry, they get upset, they jump up and down. And as a psychotherapist, I used to use the same technique about the people. So, the man who owns the school, I'm his friend. I don't give up on my friends. But I've spent 7 years at this. And you've seen him on many, 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 many of these, you know, um, YouTubes, right? He's one of the continuing characters. And, I came to the foyer of me doing Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob by that man stealing my representation and putting it on his YouTube channel. And the first story I told, that was the old Crone story, within weeks went to 70,000. He made a lot of money on that. So he wanted to do more and more of those. And I told, the Jimi Hendrix story and the David Bowie story and a few others that went viral. But every time I started to put in context of, and that as a griot, I tell you a story, you can hear it resonate inside of your spirit, not your soul, not your body, but your spirit. And some of you have been set free. You know, a good 100 of you have, and a good 20 of you have changed your lives in remarkable ways, which gives me great happiness. I mean, that's why I keep doing this, even though the powers that shouldn't be put real restraints, they at least don't take my channel down. You know, so that's a good thing, and you know I'm happy about that. And what's why I keep doing this is that this year, 2020, between 2022 and 2034, and then 2074, um, are these, stellar points in reference of time of galactic history that interesting things are going to happen with the human race. And these are times of great opportunity. And this year, 2022, is the maximum of that. And about, around Thanksgiving, I kept telling you folks that, hey, there's going to be a real, in the this winter solstice, that time is very important, right? And then the second week of January, I said, hey, you have to have conscious intent and conscious awareness of this presence, this time. And the 20 people who actually did that and was disciplined enough to do it, they changed their life 180 degrees. They're now doing things that they thought they could never do. They've had opportunities in their life, in relationships, in business, and things are changing, amazing things, right? And then others are kind of doing it, but not being disciplined, not really being focused, not really just kind of looking at it in a very dilettante kind of way. But about 20 have really, you know, embraced it. Another 80 have embraced it, but haven't really been the discipline that you need to go through it. So it's gonna be like kind of like an undigested meal. You're gonna have agita from it, right? And then there's another 4 or 500 that are aware. I mean, the stories I tell affect them, and they feel the resonance, but they basically try, not do, but try to make the change. And that's good because at some point, if they keep trying, they may do, right? And others just continue in the same path that they have for most of their life. And it usually deals with addiction, and so, and some folk, their addictions are quite harmful. They really change their body chemistry to a point where they almost seem psychotic, right? But I look at them energetically and they're not psychotic. They're mostly neurotic, right? But you drive your neuroses to a point you can get to being, you can have a psychic break. And when you have a psychic break, that's when damage can occur severely. And then that's where you go to being a sociopath, where it's all about you. It's all narcissism and ego. It's a sociopath. And then if you take that neuroses and drive it through that sociopath characteristic with inside of a psychic break, that's when you get a psychopath, and that's dangerous. And so I see our whole present, uh, you know, cultural, social dynamic of this present time of epoch of our history, um, going into that psychopathic scene. But it's just a few folk, right? Not a lot. But they are the ones at the top, and they're the ones who have most to lose because they have no real validity in who and what they are, and they live by the adrenaline of fear, right? That's why they cause all these wars and chaos and conflict and economic disruptions and social disruption, environmental disruption. They think by doing all of that, they can continually be in control. And in reality, if you just look at history, you look at every empire that has done that, they didn't last too long within the long epoch of time, right? And so 2022, you think you think 2019 was well. You start with 2016, you think that was nuts. The 4 years of Donnie Chump, which then brought us, good old JoJo, the used car salesman who didn't have a catastrophe he didn't love. And, basically we had um, Bommy Boy, who is just, a clone. He was raised in a test tube on Mars, and he was batted around like a ping pong ball through time and space. So it's like cooking as a chocolate chip cookie. So he could come out of nowhere and be president for 8 years with JoJo, the used car salesman, as his Quasimodo, right? And both those guys were just, poster children for the, hidden hand. And so that's where we're right here, 220. And here it is, February, beginning of February. We've only gone through 31 plus 5, that's 36 days of 2022. Just 6 days, right? So you thought, from 2016 to 2018 was wild and crazy with Donnie Chump. He was just a wrecking ball. You look at the dynamics of the corporate structure. Whenever you want to rebrand something, what you have to have is disruption, right? And so, like when they tried to rebrand Coca-Cola, they had, Coke 1 and Coke 2, or Pepsi and Coke. It's like the same crap, but they just were rebranding it to bring it onto new markets. Oh, this is better. So that's what Donnie Chump had to do. He had to basically be the wrecking ball. And, he was, he worked for General Electric for 10 years. Hey there, fish. The Coke was different. Yeah, no kidding. And Donnie, he was on a TV show on NBC, owned by General Electric. What was the TV show's name? The Apprentice. Donnie Chump was the apprentice for being president, right? You're fired. That's all he did. He fired more people in his administration than like most of the presidents put together. It's like unfriggin' believable. And he decimated the Supreme Court, and so it's quite amusing to see, Ruth. She hung on the best she could. She dies just a few days short of, the next guy putting this, and they put that wacko bitch in, a cult person. I mean, pretty much all of this shit is a cult, right? There's nothing of our culture that is truly an essence of reality, because the only real thing is love's co-creation. Do you see any love's co-creation in any of this? In the corporate structure? In the environment that's being done? Like I said, we are before Halloween. The internet is going to come crashing down. And along with the power grid, there'll be no electricity. Just think how no electricity, there'll be something similar to a X flare from the sun, right? The last time an X flare hit the Earth like smack on was in after the Civil War, when we were rushing to go across the nation with the railroad and kill all the Indians, a X-flare hit us. It fried every telegraph wire and phone that were just coming online, and every electrical apparatus of its time, and all of those railroad rails that were going across America, right? Well, that X flare turned one of those rails into a South Pole and one of those, you know, into a North Pole, and hit it with enough electromagnetic force of the sun that it turned those, it turned the rails into spaghetti, and some of those rails were pushed miles apart. It did a very nice job slowing the corporate endeavor. And it also caused that a lot of people talk about. It's called the mud flood, right? And the death of the Gilded Age. And that's not even in our history books, and that happened in the 1880s, right? So if they can lie about that history, it's there. If you want to dig, go look up the mud flood, see what you can find. And there's a kid, a kid. He's in his 20s. Let's see. I'll put you over there for a second. So stay there. Pick this up, and let's see if we can get a hold of our friend. There we go. Let's look at contacts. Let's look at Mr. Here in the A's. Here we go. Let's see if he answers. No, that's got the wrong one here. Back there. Go to, here he is. Let's hit that. Hit that. Let's see if he answers the phone. That's my friend Soul. Dialing. Whoops. It's not wanting to dial. Try this again. See if it does it. Oh, there we go. It's going through. Boop, 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 boop. He's not answering his phone.
Please leave your message for.
So, okay. Let's see about final contact. Here it is. You know why? Because I think you have to go to this platform called Tubi, Tubi, and they have it on their platform. And let's bring it up. There it is. Let's hit that. And let's go back to this. We'll go. Come on.
What does it feel like to sell your car to Carvana? It feels amazing. Can you get a great offer in seconds? It feels too good to be true.
Tubi, you have to listen to commercials. That's a problem. But
and when you get paid on the spot, it feels like scoring big. You know the feeling. You just never imagined you could get it from selling your car.
yes, you just sold your car. You're having an orgasm. There's a little extra special device.
We kill her. Previously on Gene Roddenberry's Earth, Final Conflict.
Let us see what human intelligence has to offer us, Spoon.
What is the purpose of the experiment?
That we may understand one another more profoundly.
What are they after? Why are they so keen to create human Talon hybrids? First with the implants, now this.
I believe they can rearrange our minds now, whenever however they want.
You should know. Your brother never blamed you for not protecting him from your father.
I'd rather not talk about this.
When you forgive your father, you'll find your faith again.
That's not gonna happen.
Tell me about him.
Thomas Blanchard. He was asleep in his cell at Attica when someone took a lead pipe to him.
Brain dead.
He's failed the neurological test repeatedly. The only thing keeping him alive is what you see.
Looks like he fits the profile. Young, agile.
His cover is perfect. He's a thief. No good one.
I don't know.
Listen, Colonel.
That's Lily's
We're not
father.
going to find anyone more suitable within the time frame.
It's not your neck on the line.
Your neck's already on the line. The doctor said you should have been dead a month ago.
Thanks for reminding me.
Brain transplant complete. Initializing memory download procedure. Memory download complete.
This
Brain
was made in
activity confirmed.
1997.
Download successful.
Welcome back, Colonel. How does it feel to be 40 years younger?
Years ago, they came, forever altering the future of humanity. William Boone's life has been destroyed. A man caught between two worlds, assigned protector to the companions, undercover agent for the liberation. An alien-implanted cyber virus expands his mind, controlling a bioengineered weapon of unprecedented power. William Boone searches for the truth.
Created by Gene Roddenberry. So that actually was true. That has been true for at least a million years. And it's still true today. And you go watch that, like I said, it's on this thing called Tubi. Gene Roddenberry's. You saw it. Just play it back. That's enough to be able to find that channel. And it's quite interesting. The stories are well written and very, very timely to today, right? That shit is going on today, right? I saw it going on in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And, around 2004, I stopped being that close to that and was more taking care of my folks because they were getting ready to die, and being working for the desperate corporate lawyers and getting paid ridiculous amounts of money for doing nothing other than what I do for you guys for free, and the man who has his name on the deed, and I don't even know if his name's on the deed, is I used to pay $1,500 a week for doing what I'm doing here, right? And I have to spend my own money to feed him. But it's well worth it for me because he's my friend, and I am doing my best. And at a certain point, you can't, as I keep saying about my mother, she always said, you can drag a horse to water, can't make him drink. And in psychotherapy, unless the person wants to face the issues and heal themselves, pretty much, and that is the issue of the pharmacology of today, of profit, right? And I just experienced a great deal of internet interruption right there. I don't know how jittery I was, but every time I seem to talk about things like this, I get interrupted. But the interruption is going to be total. Before sometime between now and Halloween, and I think it's going to be closer to Halloween, right? But we are going to be visited by those guys before or around 4th of July of this year. So we're looking at, a visitation or disclosure of a visitation, because they've been here for at least 1,000,000 years. And so that's going to come around. And then there will be this event where, pretty much our whole infrastructure will collapse. No food, no heat, no, around, Halloween. Not quite winter yet, but, not really cold enough to start killing lots of people, but, getting close to it. And no vehicles will run, no infrastructure will be at all, no telecommunication, no nothing, period. Now, me, not so bad. I live out in the woods. I eat bark. I eat dandelions. I eat burdock. That's what keeps me alive. And I have a artesian well that brings me some of the cleanest water going. And it'll be great because, the 20 years I've lived there, I've had, or 22 years I've lived there, I've had a great time in that. The rich folk, the real annoying humans haven't been around me. I've had quiet and peace, and it's been an animal sanctuary. And it's only since 2020 that the rich found, we can live there, And so they've been buying up everything, moving everything. But once there's no electricity, no anything, they can't drive their cars, nothing works, they won't really succeed. They won't live, won't exist. And it'll be okay for me. And the right people, as has been, show up, right? So it'll be fine. But before Christmas of 2022, Elon Musk will say, listen, I've gone to Mars and I've negotiated, this thing with the people who've been visiting us for so long, and they're going to come and fix it all. And I'm going to be the new, leader, the human interface between them and us, and that will be the big splat, as I've been calling it for the last 3 years. Right? Big event, right? And so, that go watch that TV show. It really defines the kind of relationship and what is going on. And like I said earlier, Gene Roddenberry is truly quite the, griot of the future, right? So, I reckon they couldn't be any worse than what we got now. Pretty much they are the folks we got now. But as a human, of course, no, they're alien. And what is human? I mean, what's quite interesting about Homo sapiens sapien, right, is that we aren't human, right? We are the only species on the planet that doesn't act like any of the other animals. We're the only one. Yes, lions kill gazelles, but doesn't wipe out whole species, They don't disrupt the livelihood of the savannah, right? They fit into the circle of life, And so The real interesting thing is to see what happens, because what's we are being controlled from are those folks who are going to land on 4th of July, right? And Elon Musk will be our new fearless leader. He'll be like Boris Badenoch. Remember Rocky J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle the Moose? Yes, that's Rocky and Bullwinkle, and Elon Musk, and who would Natasha be? Oh, Natasha would be Hillary Clinton. Yep. So she was the president the whole time Billy Boy was. She was the reptile in the White House. And then she was Secretary of State. She was the person who brought on the catastrophe of the Arab Spring. She's really good with euphemisms. Anyway, so that is the dynamic of addiction, right? And everyone has experienced addiction. Now, some people, what's truly an addiction is when you're controlled by it. If you overdose on something, I overdosed on 10 years of the total, hedonism. I went full throttle into hedonism, and I have to say that I enjoyed every second of it because I went by my 3 rules. Doctor, do no harm. I didn't harm anybody, not even myself, because I didn't die. And when I did die, and I played a spaghetti, and I went and saw my life review, and all my teachers were there patting me on the back and saying what a great job I had done up to that point. Then I had to go back and complete the job. But I didn't. I could choose to stay there and relax and not, but I'd be put back in the wearing blender of karma, and who knows where I'd pop out. Yes, I would pop out in a place that would be good, or good within the construct of what people in this deluded illusion think is good, but I'd have to deal with that, And yes, I would be probably more, as informed as I was in this life, probably more, and probably more disciplined. Being Aquarian's Aquarian, totally, the major thing, and I think is, the Uranus, the Plutonian spirit of just wanting to have a good time and knowing, and a good time is not just wanting to have a good time, wanting to be happy. And what makes me happy is making others happy. And one of the tasks of when you do that is to fix things. And that's very Uranian, right? So that's very, Pluto, right? And Pluto has a lot to do with war and conflict. So, but I'm the diplomat of war and conflict. I mean, I work all through it, around it, but I don't cause it. I fix things that were caused by it, right? I did that when I, was 19 to 20 at the VA, right? And I still worked as an electrician. That was, because most of the time that I worked at the VA I was off in school, and it wasn't a 9 to 5 type of school. It was more 365, 24/7. But within that construct, I'm still fixing things. And so, so this life has been a great blessing to me. Every point where I could have been totally murdered, destroyed, obliterated, hobbled, handicapped, all of those things were blessings rather than, a handicap. And so, and a good deal of you know what I'm talking about. You've all had issues. And that why the cadre meets, why the cadre is here, is because you've all had that experience on some level. And you've all overcome it on some level. And my stories resonate with you because it resonates with the conflict, the challenge, and your ability to do, right, rather than to succumb to the addiction of your ego, right? So yes, we all have egos. If you live in a mud puppet body, you have an ego, but you don't. You can have a egoless ego. And as I observe all of you there on the Akashic record form of the cadre, you all have overcome your ego in your own way, right? And it has helped you grow and strengthen your life's path and your spirit. You haven't been overcome by your body. You haven't been overcome by your ego. You haven't been overcome by your soul, which is your ego's id. That's your soul, right? And you have illuminated your spirit in this life, and that's why you like Dreamy Dreamland, because it resonates with that illumination of your spirit. And you're realizing that this is a salient time, and what I have to tell as a story teaches you things that you knew but didn't have a confidence enough to do, and now you are doing, and that's a great joy to me. And like I said, there are about 50 of you who have truly, gone surpassed what my expectations were. And that's why I have great joy in my heart. That's why I can, people go, how can you put up with that guy? Well, because I have great joy in my heart. And I have not an expectation of that he will come to pass, but that what I am doing now will have an effect on him in a positive way, that he will resonate in a positive nature, for this life and the next. And that is one of the greatest things you can do for anyone else, because if you have an expectation of like fixing it, so I'm Mr. Fix It, but I, a good 40 years ago had to learn that all I could do was my best. I had a great track record, but I had a number of incidents where I thought I could fix anything, and I couldn't. And I had to realize, and that's kind of really when I brought on my 3 rules. I had those experiences, and that's, I always had the rule of doctor do no harm, right? And I really embraced that when I was 16. Between 16 and 19, I had this thing going on where I was the dude. I was the amazement of most people who came in contact with me. And that right there is an addiction. And I broke that addiction, because instead of being the dude, I was me doing my best, right? I was me doing what I agreed to do when I was that parking lot attendant, when I met Bob in Las Vegas, and made the agreement in the VIP lounge of the Horny Dog Titty Bar, owned by Bob. So, some people might find that, sacrilegious, but, it's Bob. It's not Dog. It's not Bocce Ball or any of the other clown princes that religions, not spirit, religions, business plans have portrayed, right? So, any questions? Been on now 2 hours and 9 minutes. The other 2 shows were about an hour each, give or take. It's now about 11:14, and I'm going to go to bed unless we have a little more of a elevated conversation here. Not elevated, but more folk. take it apart. Fish is always, a great member of, and so is Jane. But it'd be nice to hear from others that interacted. So it's about time for bed. Fish sends us LOL. Is that laugh out loud or love only love? I don't know. Either way, it's right on, right? So I enjoyed tonight's little venture into addiction. I hope it was entertaining, and that's good. I love you, Fish. I love all the cadre, and I will speak to you. And remember, you can get a hold of me, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail. And if you have a phone number, you can leave it. If you are in a foreign country, a lot of people have given me their phone number and they are part of, WhatsApp and Vibe. And so I talk to about 50 or so all around the world. And it's so much more intimate when you can talk to somebody. And the email is also intimate because it's just me and you, and not the whole World Wide Web. So that's about it for now. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, sometime between whenever I wake up and noon. And again, I advise you to go, because these shows have a great depth to them, meaning they are coded. They are like a jigsaw puzzle, right? So yes, I tell you a story, but there's a lot of information in there, and it's connected like a jigsaw. There are lots of these pieces that look for the key, right? And they are a lot deeper. I mean, this my stories can be deep, but they interconnect with other things. And if you save the stories for posterity, they will be there, and you can share them with others. Because I'm obviously restricted within the algorithm, but I'm not restricted from putting things up because it's a sermonic energy that has it go. But this platform is not going to exist very much longer. Not my channel per se, but the platform altogether, and the World Wide Web altogether, and electricity as we know it. On the metered, it's going to come a whole different way. So anyway, that's a good thing. It's a good opportunity. It's a good. This year has a great potential for humanity to wake up. Wake up, folks! Wake up! Wake up! Come on, wake up! I'll leave you with this one little story. Buddha was by the side of the road in quiet contemplation, and his connectivity to love's co-creation was so luminescent, anyone who went by on the side of the road would be struck. And there was a traveler who was struck, and he was just your usual mud puppet, but he was so struck he had to go over and like tug on Buddha's robe and say, man, are you God? Are you God? And Buddha looked down and said, no. Well, man, what are you, man? What are you? What are you? And Buddha replied, I am awake. And that is what you need to do. And if you look at these stories that I tell, there is a great deal of knowledge and truth. Wisdom, that's not mine. I'm just the storyteller. I'm just the entertainer. But you can become awake. Now, by awakening, you may find things a tad difficult because you're going to have to wake up from your dream. You're going to have to wake up to your addictions. You're going to have to wake up to the lies you've been telling yourself your whole life. Now, most of the cadre are far ahead of that. They have woken up to a point. They've woken up to a point enough to watch me, right? There are a lot of people. I mean, there are thousands who watch. There's only, there are a lot of folks who have, become subscribers, but it doesn't get, contacted. Like I keep watching. I mean, it's the numbers. It's quite interesting how it's like the jitter of the information. It's like time changes. It's like, oh, you're right here, and then all of a sudden things are different. It's that deja vu, the fork in the road, the switch in the track. You're now going this way instead of that way or this way, right? But you can choose. When you wake up enough, you can choose, right? Now, your griot, your sensei, now Bob, back when I was the dude, man, I was awake maybe 20%, right? And from, 16, 19, from about that time to about now, I have woken up. Oh, I'm awake maybe 80%, but there's still 20% of me that's a moron. I can, but that other 60%, no, breathe, meditate, go into state, see what's going on, and I do. I never take the bait, right? This morning, I could have taken the bait. It would have been messy, but I didn't. I went into state. I got the frame and held the frame, and things calmed down. Right? But not after, I'm very saddened by what people do to themselves when they get angry like that. The cortisol level goes through the roof. The adrenaline goes through the roof, and that's why they go off to the races. And it does physical damage to organs. And people want to know why they get fat. People want to know why they get diseased. And that's what it is. It's the lack of ease. There is no homeostasis. How could I come? And so I spent 10 years being in a, like, the sulfuric acid tub of disease, right? And, again, I kind of slipped back into the dude, because, over 10 years, let's just say 10 times 10, so 100 events of total chaos within the corporate structure, I was able to bring 1,000 people to a place where they could agree, where they wanted to kill each other. They wanted to have war, right? And I negotiated with the diplomat to bring folks to the peace table, where they came to an agreement and they healed themselves, not just came to an agreement that they would break the next year. And when I died that place, spaghetti, it took me 6 years to get to a place where I thought, it'd be nice to make that kind of money again. But I didn't need to, because I was totally at ease and balance. And I called up my clientele, my little black book, and every single one of them replaced me with an app. And they said, "Oh, Al, we thought you were dead," because that was the tale told to everyone, because I did die in a plate of spaghetti. But I healed myself and kept healing myself. So I got to this place where I lost 200 pounds. And yes, there's a lot of damage in my body, but I'm at a homeostasis. And like today was a great test and example of me staying in that homeostasis, that balance, because I couldn't go there. It would have truly, really damaged me. But what saddened me was to see how much that individual damaged themselves. And it just increased the shackles of their addiction. And it's sad. And it's pretty obvious to me that this was, like I said, this was my, when you're on when Rolling Stones went on their final tour like 20 years ago, but they're still touring. And they'll all tour until they die, and they'll have robots replacing them, because they're just such, that's what they do. So when they thought they were going to retire because they had millions and millions of dollars, they realized it wasn't so much the money anymore. It was that they loved doing that, right? So they just kept doing it until they died, right? And my realization is that I can't fix everyone. And I realized that when I was 19 and I became this, but that 10 years of, being the dude, of being able to fix, I never had a failure. Never, ever, ever, never, never. So that was pretty amazing run. And my street cred was truly amazing. And my gravitas was, I could walk into any boardroom dressed like a homeless guy. But that was, those folks realized that was part of my shtick. I needed to look that way to shake up those corporate folk who thought anyone who looked like this couldn't do anything. But the guy who's like looking like the homeless guy with these two dogs, he'll not only fix the legal problem, but healed them. So when I came back 6 years later looking for a little employment, because a little bit of green, money is not a bad thing. None of this material world we have is a bad thing. It's being addicted to it is a bad thing. So you want to give it's my birthday month, Why don't you put something in my PayPal? You haven't done it yet, do it now, right? Just go to PayPal and put it on the old. They ask you, it's the dudeawake42@gmail. It works. There are 4 people who religiously give me something every month, right? Now they're I don't call them poor because they're not. They're rich in spirit and rich in life, and they have a great life, but their cash flow isn't, But they do give me something every month. Now there are a lot of you there who make a lot of money, who have really good jobs. You like I was explaining the pyramid thing, and there are all these different levels of control. You're kind of in here in the level of control, not the super top, but you're making a pretty good salary where you're not worrying about how to pay your bills. Well, I don't worry about paying my bills, so that's not my word. But it's always nice to have a little more green energy, and especially in this last waning days of that, but it doesn't make a difference. But it would be good for you. It would be good for your spirit to be generous, right? So you want to put something, and it's my birthday. Come on, it's my birthday. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Come on. Throw something in that PayPal. It'd be good for you. It really would. And, and remember, when you get a hold of me, dudeawake42@gmail, the dudeawake42@gmail, the dudeawake42@gmail. And when PayPal asks, who do we send it to? The dudeawake42@gmail. Okay? I appreciate everything. I love you all, and sweet dreams. I sign off now with a prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. As was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. It's not quite tomorrow now. It soon will be, but I'll see you in about, 6, 7 hours, give or take.